The twin suns of Velthara rose slowly over the shining towers of the royal capital. Their light spilled across silver walls, golden domes, and wide marble courtyards filled with blue-leaf trees. From her balcony, Queen Lyra of the Thalren Empire watched her city wake. Ships drifted through the morning sky like glittering birds, and the sound of music came from the streets below. Beside her, standing quietly with a cup of warm tea in his hands, was Elias Kane, her husband, a human. The palace servants bowed as they passed, though many still whispered after they left. It had been a year since the queen married this strange man from a distant human colony, but many nobles still did not understand why. The Thalren were proud and ancient, with technology far beyond most species. They had never shared their throne with an outsider before, especially not with a man who wore simple clothes, spoke softly, and preferred fixing machines to attending meetings. But Queen Lyra saw something in him that the others did not. He was kind, thoughtful, calm even when chaos surrounded him. When he smiled, the weight of her crown seemed lighter. She turned to him now. "You are quiet this morning, Elias," she said softly. "Does something trouble you?" He smiled faintly. "Just thinking," he replied. "Your world is very peaceful. It's good to see." "You make it sound strange," she teased, "as if peace is something rare." He looked into the distance for a moment, his gray eyes distant. "It is rarer than most think." Lyra tilted her head but didn't ask more. She had learned long ago that Elias carried many memories he rarely spoke about. Memories from his time before coming to Velthara. She didn't press him. She only reached for his hand and he squeezed hers gently. Later that morning, in the royal hall, the queen held council with her advisors. The long table shimmered with holographic displays showing trade routes, border patrols, and diplomatic treaties. Elias sat quietly at the end, listening but saying little. He was not part of the council, but Lyra always invited him to attend. His presence calmed her even when politics turned harsh. As the meeting went on, Minister Cathar, one of the old nobles, leaned toward the queen. "Majesty," he said with a smooth voice, "with respect, perhaps your human consort need not attend these matters. They may be too complex for an outsider." Elias did not react, but Lyra saw the insult clearly. Her golden eyes hardened. "Elias is my husband," she said firmly. "His presence is welcome wherever I am." The hall fell silent. Minister Cathar bowed stiffly, his face pale. "Yes, Majesty," he murmured. Elias gave her a small nod of thanks, but he said nothing. That was his way, quiet strength. The nobles thought silence meant weakness, but Lyra had begun to suspect otherwise. After the meeting, she found him in the palace workshop, surrounded by broken drones and mechanical parts. He was repairing a damaged cleaning robot, humming a slow tune from Earth. "You could have spoken up," she said, folding her arms. He looked up and smiled. "And ruin your dramatic defense? I wouldn't dare." She laughed, but then she asked seriously, "Do their words ever bother you?" "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I've learned something in my life. Respect that is forced doesn't last. I'd rather earn it one act at a time." Lyra watched him tighten a bolt on the machine, his hands steady and precise. There was something oddly beautiful in his patience. She wondered again what kind of life he had lived before coming here. But before she could ask, the palace alarm suddenly blared. A red warning light filled the room, and the sound of metallic chimes echoed through the halls. Guards rushed past the doors, their armor glowing with energy. "Report!" shouted one of the captains. A trembling officer appeared in the doorway. "Your Majesty, a fleet has entered our outer system, unidentified ships. They carry the mark of the Vorak Dominion." The name froze the room. Even Lyra felt a chill. The Vorak were ruthless conquerors, known across the galaxy for destroying any world that resisted them. The Thalren Empire had not seen their ships in centuries. Lyra straightened. "Summon the generals. Prepare the defense fleet." "Yes, Majesty." She turned to Elias. "Stay here." This could be dangerous, but he didn't move. His calm eyes met hers. "Do you have their fleet formation data?" he asked quietly. Lyra blinked. "What?" "The formation," he repeated. "Their entry vectors, ship types, and spacing. Do you have that data yet?" Her generals exchanged confused looks. "Why does that matter?" one of them asked. "We must ready our cannons and shields first." Elias didn't look at the general. "Because if they are using their standard wedge formation, You can trap them in your planet's magnetic field before they even reach orbit." The room fell silent. Lyra stared at him. "How do you know that?" Elias exhaled slowly. "Because I've fought them before." Everyone turned toward him in shock. The Queen's eyes widened as she saw something new in his face, not the gentle kindness she was used to, but a quiet confidence, like a soldier remembering old instincts. She stepped closer. "You fought the Vorak? How?" "Humans were never part of that war." He gave a small, sad smile. "Not officially." Moments later, they stood in the Royal War Room, its walls glowing with holographic maps of space. Dozens of ships were approaching, dark, sharp, and massive. The Vorak fleet looked like a wall of moving knives. The generals shouted orders, repositioning their defense ships. Lyra watched, her heart heavy with worry. Then Elias walked up to the table and began tapping controls as if he had done it 1,000 times. "What are you doing?" asked one officer, alarmed. "Looking for patterns," Elias replied calmly. "The Vorak always attack in predictable cycles. If you time your counterfire to their reload phase, you can disable their command ships before they coordinate the rest." No one argued. His tone left no room for doubt. He turned to Lyra. "Your defense grid is strong, but your communications are too slow. You'll need direct command links between squadrons." Lyra hesitated. "That would require bypassing royal security codes." "Then do it," he said softly. "Or you'll lose your capital before the sun set." For the first time, her generals followed his command without question. Hours passed like minutes. The tension in the room grew as the enemy fleet approached the planet's orbit. Lyra stood beside Elias, watching the battle unfold on the screens. The first Vorak ships opened fire, bright beams cutting through space. The Thalren defense grid responded, and explosions lit the dark sky. Elias's voice was calm through it all. "Move the western squadron 30 degrees. Hold fire until the third volley. Now fire!" The enemy ships burst apart one by one. The alien officers gasped in awe. Lyra couldn't take her eyes off him. The man she had married, the man she thought was quiet and harmless, was standing tall and focused, commanding a war like he had been born for it. When the first wave of Vorak ships retreated, cheers filled the room, but Elias only lowered his head slightly as if remembering something painful. "It's not over," he murmured. "They'll be back." Lyra looked at him silently, her heart torn between fear and admiration. She had always thought she knew her husband. Now she wasn't sure. That night, after the alarms ended, she found him once more on the balcony. The stars burned bright above the city. "You never told me who you really were," she said quietly. He looked at the stars. "I tried to leave that life behind." "Then why did you come here to me?" He smiled faintly. "Because you built something worth protecting." Lyra said nothing. She only stood beside him, her heart heavy with new understanding. The humble man she had married was not simple at all. He was something far more powerful, something the galaxy had forgotten. The next morning, the palace was quieter than usual. The smell of burned metal still hung in the air from the night's battle. Repair drones floated through the sky, fixing damaged towers and communication arrays. The people of Velthara moved carefully, whispering about the strange victory their fleet had achieved. Some said the Queen's new husband had guided the battle himself. Others laughed and said it was only a rumor. How could one soft-spoken human command a fleet of the Thalren Empire? Inside the Royal Command Hall, Queen Lyra stood at the main console reviewing the battle report. The enemy had retreated, but not far. The Vorak ships were regrouping at the edge of the system. Their losses were heavy, yet their strength was still terrifying. Behind her, the great doors opened. Elias entered, his face calm but tired. His clothes were still smudged with grease and dust from the long night. Lyra turned toward him, her golden eyes filled with questions. "Elias," she said softly, "I want the truth. Who are you really?" He sighed and looked out the wide window where the dawn light touched the city. "You already know who I am," he said, "but perhaps not what I was. Then tell me." Her voice was steady, but she felt her heart beating faster. Elias walked closer, stopping near the console. "I was born on a small colony world called Haven's Reach. My family were engineers. When I was old enough, I joined the Terran Defense Navy. At first, I was just a systems officer. But when the war came, everything changed." Lyra frowned. "War? Humanity fought in many wars, but none against the Vorak." "That's what your records say," Elias replied quietly. But there were wars that never made it into alien history. Wars fought in the dark between the stars when human colonies were still young. The Vorak came to test us once, long ago. They destroyed 3 human worlds before we pushed them back. The Queen's eyes widened. The Thalren archives hold no record of this. They wouldn't, Elias said. The Terran Navy erased most of it. We didn't want to draw attention from stronger civilizations. We were still small then, still learning. But we learned fast. He turned toward the holographic display. It showed the positions of the Vorak fleet, their red markers glowing like wounds against the black space. I commanded the human fleet at the Siege of Titan. We were outnumbered 10-1. The Vorak thought humans were easy prey. They learned otherwise. Lyra listened silently. The calm tone of his voice carried weight, like someone who had seen too much but refused to let it break him. "What happened after the siege?" she asked. "We won," he said softly, "but at a cost. Too many ships lost. Too many friends gone. After that, I left the service. I didn't want to fight anymore. I traveled, worked as an engineer, and eventually came here. I thought I could build a peaceful life." Lyra studied him for a long time. She had seen many warriors before, proud generals, fierce soldiers, but Elias was different. He carried strength without showing it. He didn't boast. He didn't seek praise. And yet there was something in him the galaxy had forgotten. A human's will to fight when pushed too far. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked gently. He smiled sadly. "Would you have believed me if I said your humble husband once commanded fleets?" Lyra almost smiled back. Perhaps not. Their moment of calm ended when the door slid open again. Minister Kethar entered, his tone sharp and impatient. "Your Majesty," he said, bowing slightly, "our scouts confirm the Vorak fleet is regrouping. Their main warship, the Dreadspire, has moved into position. They will strike again within the cycle." Lyra nodded. "Then we must prepare. Double our planetary shields and alert the defense squadrons." But Elias stepped forward. "That won't be enough," he said. Kethar turned toward him with irritation. "And what would you suggest, human?" "That we surrender?" Elias's calm gaze met his. "I suggest we end this fight before it begins." The minister frowned. "How?" Elias pointed at the star map. "The Vorak's main supply ship is here, just beyond your system's third moon. If we destroy that ship, the rest of their fleet will lose coordination. They'll have to retreat or risk starvation." Kethar shook his head. "That is madness. Their defenses are impenetrable." Elias's voice remained steady. "Not if you know where to hit." Lyra looked between them. "You believe you can do this?" "I know I can," Elias said simply. "But I'll need command authority over one strike group, and the fastest ships you have." The Queen hesitated. The thought of sending her husband into battle again made her uneasy. But his confidence was unshakable. Around him, even the generals began to nod. At last, Lyra said quietly, "You'll have it." By midday, the palace hangars roared with life. Thalren engineers and human technicians worked side by side, loading torpedoes and charging energy cells. Elias inspected every ship himself. He moved among the soldiers calmly, giving short but clear orders. His quiet voice carried more command than most generals' shouts. Queen Lyra watched from the balcony above. To her surprise, even the proud Thalren pilots listened to him without argument. His words were simple but sharp, like he spoke a language every warrior understood. When the last ship was ready, Lyra walked down to him. "I could order you to stay," she said softly. "You could," Elias agreed. "But you won't." "No," she said. "Because I trust you," he smiled. "Then I'll bring your people home." The strike group launched just before dusk. From the capital's towers, the people watched streaks of blue light rise into the heavens. The Queen stood alone on her balcony, her heart filled with both pride and fear. In space, the small fleet flew in tight formation. Elias sat in the command seat of the lead ship, the Vigilant Star. The Thalren officers around him watched as he moved with practiced ease, adjusting power levels, changing course angles by fractions of a degree. "Vorak sensors will detect us soon," said one pilot. Elias nodded. "Let them. We want them to see us, just not where we really are." He activated a sequence of coded commands. A wave of false signals spread across space, creating the illusion of hundreds of ghost ships. The enemy scanners would see a massive fleet when there were only a dozen real ships. When the Vorak defense line opened fire on the fake readings, Elias gave a short command. Now. The Vigilant Star and its sister ships dropped from stealth, diving through the chaos. The enemy's main supply vessel loomed ahead, a massive fortress surrounded by shield platforms. Elias moved with perfect timing. All ships target the relay nodes, not the hull. Disable their control systems first. Explosions lit the darkness as Thalren plasma bursts struck the nodes. The enemy shields flickered and Elias gave the final order. Full spread. Fire everything. The sky bloomed with white fire. The supply ship's reactor collapsed in a silent flash of light. Cheers filled the cabin. The crew shouted in triumph, but Elias only leaned back quietly. Signal the Queen, he said. Tell her it's done. Hours later, Elias returned to Velthara. When he stepped out of the shuttle, the entire landing bay erupted in applause. Soldiers, officers, and citizens cheered the human who had saved them again. Queen Lyra walked forward through the crowd. She stopped before him, her voice trembling with relief. You've done what even my best generals could not. Elias smiled slightly. I just remembered some old lessons. She studied him closely. You still call yourself a humble man, but there's nothing ordinary about you, Elias Kane. He looked at her gently. I don't want to be a legend, Lyra. I just want peace. But peace must be protected. She nodded slowly. She finally understood that his calm was not weakness, it was control. Underneath his quiet nature lived a warrior who carried both great power and great pain. As the sun set over the shining city, the Queen and her human husband stood together, knowing the Vorak would return soon. But this time they would be ready. The Thalren Empire had not seen peace for many years, but the people of Velthara had grown used to believing their walls were unbreakable. The defeat of the Vorak supply fleet had given them hope. The streets filled with cheers and the Queen's banners waved from every tower. Children sang songs about the human commander, though many still whispered his name in wonder. But Elias Kane did not celebrate. He stood quietly in the high observation deck of the Royal Command Tower, watching the distant stars through the transparent walls. His reflection looked older than he remembered. He had hoped the battle at the third moon would end the threat, but the Vorak Dominion did not forgive defeat. They would return. He could feel it. The soft sound of footsteps broke his thoughts. Queen Lyra approached, her royal robe flowing behind her. Her eyes were warm, but she could sense the weight on his mind. You should rest, Elias, she said gently. You've done enough for now. He gave a faint smile. In war, resting too soon is the fastest way to lose. Lyra frowned slightly. Is that a human saying? One I learned the hard way, he replied. She came beside him and looked at the stars. You truly believe they will attack again? They lost pride, not strength, Elias said quietly. The Vorak hate losing. They'll send their full fleet next time. Thousands of ships, maybe more. Lyra crossed her arms. Then we'll be ready. You've shown us what human strategy can do. My generals are already studying your methods. Elias nodded slowly. That's good. But they'll need to understand more than tactics. They'll need to understand how humans think about war. Later that day, in the great royal war chamber, hundreds of Thalren officers gathered. The air shimmered with floating holograms of ships, energy grids, and battlefield models. Elias stood in front of them, not wearing royal robes or armor, only a plain gray jacket. His calm presence silenced the entire room. He pointed to the holographic image of the Vorak fleet. You believe size wins wars, he said simply. That's your first mistake. The Vorak think the same way. Humans learned long ago that numbers mean nothing if your enemy can't understand your next move. The generals exchanged glances, listening closely. Elias continued. Your ships are powerful but predictable. Your enemy knows how you'll fight before the first shot is fired. That's why they've beaten so many empires. You must break your own habits. He tapped the screen, shifting the image. We use deception. Make them see what isn't real. We use speed. Hit hard and vanish. We use adaptation. Change plans faster than they can react. Minister Kether, who had once doubted him, raised a hand. But our ships were not designed for such tactics. Then redesign them, Elias replied simply. War doesn't care about tradition. His words carried across the chamber like quiet thunder. Even the proudest officers nodded in respect. Days turned into weeks as the Queen's engineers worked under Elias's guidance. The Thalren fleet began to change. New command links allowed ships to move in smaller, faster groups. Drones were reprogrammed to act as decoys. Communication systems were rebuilt for rapid orders. Elias trained the officers personally. He showed them how to read an enemy's pattern, how to predict their next move, and how to strike at weak points that others ignored. Sometimes, when the Queen watched him from a distance, she saw a different man. His calm voice became firm, his movements sharp. He spoke with the confidence of someone who had lived through countless battles. She realized that Elias didn't just know war, he understood it. The way an artist understands color or a musician understands rhythm. At night, when they were alone on the balcony, she asked him once, "How do you stay calm when everything burns around you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "Because fear wastes time," he said softly. "And time decides who lives and who doesn't." Lyra turned her eyes toward the stars. "That's a terrible truth," he nodded. "It is. But it's also what keeps me alive." The warning came sooner than expected. 3 weeks after the training began, the outer colonies sent a desperate transmission. The Vorak fleet had returned, this time with more ships than anyone could count. The holographic display filled with red dots spreading across the system like a storm. At the center of it all was a massive structure, the Dreadspire command ship, twice the size of any Thalren battleship. The generals gasped. Lyra's heart grew cold. Elias, however, only narrowed his eyes. "So they brought their flagship," he said quietly. "Good, that makes this simpler." Everyone turned toward him. "Simpler?" Kethar asked in disbelief. Elias nodded. "Cut off the head and the body dies. The Dreadspire controls their fleet communications. If we take it down, the Vorak will lose coordination. It'll be chaos." The Queen stared at the red light representing the enemy command ship. "You mean to strike their flagship?" Elias nodded again. "Yes, but not by meeting them head-on. We'll lure them closer to your world's orbit. Make them believe we're retreating, then spring a trap." "What kind of trap?" "A human one." The Thalren defense fleets took formation across the upper orbit of Velthara. To the untrained eye, it looked like they were preparing a desperate final stand. The Vorak fleet approached with overconfidence, believing victory was certain. But beneath the planet's magnetic field, hidden deep in shadow, lay hundreds of unmanned drones armed with plasma charges, devices Elias had designed himself. As the Vorak ships entered range, Elias stood in the command center beside the Queen. The room was tense, filled with the hum of scanners and voices of officers reporting distances. "They're hailing us," an aide said. "The Vorak commander demands your surrender." Lyra glanced at Elias. "And should I answer?" He shook his head. "Not yet." The Vorak fleet began to fire. Beams of red energy struck the Thalren shields, shaking the city towers. Explosions lit the night sky. "Hold positions," Elias said calmly. "Hold," one officer shouted. "We're being hit hard." "Hold," Elias repeated, his voice firm. "Wait for my mark." Seconds felt like hours. Then he saw what he had been waiting for. The enemy ships tightening formation to focus fire on one target. Elias gave a sharp nod. "Now." He pressed a control key and the hidden drones rose from the magnetic field like a silent wave. They spread out, encircling the Vorak fleet. The room fell silent as Elias whispered, "Detonate." A massive burst of light filled the sky. The magnetic field ignited with the energy of 100 storms. Enemy shields collapsed instantly. The Dreadspire itself was struck by a dozen plasma charges, its hull cracking like glass. The entire command center shook from the blast. Officers cheered as the Vorak ships began to scatter, their formation breaking apart. Lyra looked at Elias in astonishment. "You used the planet itself as a weapon?" He nodded. "Nature always has the biggest gun. You just have to learn how to aim it." The battle raged for hours, but the outcome was clear. The Vorak fleet was broken. Thousands of enemy ships fled into the darkness, their command chain destroyed. The Thalren fleet, once divided and uncertain, moved as one under Elias's direction. When the last enemy vessel vanished from the radar, the room erupted in cheers. Officers saluted. Soldiers shouted his name. Even Minister Kethar bowed deeply, but Elias didn't smile. He only turned to Lyra and said softly, "They'll return again someday. Empires always do. The question is, what kind of empire will you be when they do?" Lyra met his eyes. "A stronger one. Because of you." He looked away, his voice low. "Because of us." That night, while the city celebrated, Elias stood alone on the palace balcony once more. The stars shimmered with quiet beauty. The battle had been won, but peace always felt fragile to him. Lyra joined him, dressed in a simple gown, her crown left behind. For a while they said nothing. Then she whispered, "When I married you, I thought I was marrying a humble man." Elias smiled faintly. "You were, but now I see you're something else entirely." He looked at her gently. "I'm both. A humble man who remembers how to fight." She smiled, though her eyes were soft with worry. "And if war finds us again? Then I'll fight again," he said quietly, "until I don't have to anymore." They stood together in silence, watching the stars, the queen and her human, the ruler and the warrior, two souls bound by duty and something deeper, and far beyond the horizon. Among the ruins of the Vorak fleet, something stirred in the shadows of space. Watching, waiting. The victory over the Vorak fleet had been celebrated across Velthara. Banners waved from every tower, songs of the human commander spread through the streets, and citizens cheered their queen and her mysterious husband. Yet in the quiet halls of the palace, not everyone felt safe. Queen Lyra could sense a tension she could not shake. She had seen Elias's calm strength in battle, his clever tactics and his ability to turn the tide. But she also knew the Vorak were relentless. They had not yet accepted defeat. Somewhere hidden in the darkness of space, they were plotting their next move. Elias sensed it too. He did not speak much, but his eyes scanned every report with sharp attention. It was late at night when the first alarm sounded. Red lights flashed through the palace corridors, accompanied by a high-pitched warning hum. Guards rushed past doors, their energy weapons glowing. The queen was awakened by the sound and found Elias already standing, his posture tense, listening to the alert system. "What is it?" she asked, her voice calm but urgent. "Movement in the lower wings of the palace," he said softly. "Not ships. Someone is inside." Before she could respond, he had grabbed a small device from his belt, a scanner that pulsed faint blue light. He moved silently toward the door, his steps controlled, almost invisible. The palace corridors were quiet except for the hum of alarms. Shadows stretched long across the white marble floors. Elias's eyes darted from side to side, scanning for heat signatures. His experience as a soldier and strategist gave him an almost instinctive awareness of danger. Lyra followed closely behind, though she trusted the palace guards as well. Her mind raced. Who could dare enter the royal palace uninvited? Dvorak, rebels? Suddenly a figure moved in the darkness ahead. It was humanoid but wore a stealth suit that bent the light around them. Elias raised a hand to stop Lyra, then whispered, "Let them come to us. Don't chase. They must think we are unaware." The intruder paused, scanning the corridor, then moved forward again. Elias's calm voice broke the silence. "Now." He activated a trap, releasing a cloud of micro-drones that flew silently toward the enemy. They emitted a small, non-lethal pulse that disabled the intruder's suit, revealing their form. Two more figures emerged from a side corridor, rushing toward the queen. Elias moved faster than the guards, his hand gripping a small energy baton. With precise movements, he disarmed one, flipped another into a wall, and subdued the third. Every motion was controlled, quick, and efficient. Lyra watched in shock. The man she thought of as gentle and ordinary was moving like a warrior born for combat. The battle in the hallways lasted only minutes, yet it felt much longer. By the time the guards arrived, the intruders were all captured, groaning in pain but alive. Elias looked over the room, checking the security feeds. "No more," he said simply. "For now." Lyra stepped closer to him, her voice trembling. "You said you left war behind. Why do you still fight so easily?" He turned to her, calm but firm. "War never leaves a soldier, it waits. You can ignore it, avoid it, even try to forget. But when it comes back, you face it, or someone else will die." She nodded, understanding the depth of his words. This man, the one she had married thinking he was humble and quiet, carried the weight of countless battles in his calm eyes. After the palace was secured, Elias worked with the guards and engineers to strengthen defenses. He installed new sensors, redesigned patrol routes, and set up automated alert systems that could detect even the most stealthy intruders. Lyra observed him in awe. Every step he took was deliberate, every decision made with precision. This was a man who had lived through real danger and learned to survive and protect others. At dinner that night, the queen could not hide her curiosity any longer. "Elias," she asked softly, "what are you?" You are not like any human I have met before. You move, you think, you plan, everything seems perfect. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. I am just a man, Lyra. A man who has lived a long time in dangerous places. I have seen death, and I have learned to avoid it while protecting others. That is all. But you are more than that, she whispered. You saved this palace and our people without firing a single shot outside. And yet, you are still calm. I have to be, he replied. Calmness keeps me alive. Calmness keeps the people I care about alive. You have no idea how much chaos I have seen. Days passed and the palace slowly returned to normal, yet the shadow of the Vorak threat lingered. The Queen and Elias met in the war room each evening, reviewing fleet positions, scout reports, and enemy signals. Elias trained the Thalren officers personally, teaching them how to anticipate attacks, how to think faster than the enemy, and how to act decisively. The Queen watched as her husband transformed the way her military operated. It was not just strategy, he was changing their entire approach to war. Even the proudest generals followed his instructions without question. One night, while walking together through the palace gardens, Lyra asked, "Do you ever fear failure?" Elias stopped, looking at the twin moons reflecting on the blue-leaf trees. "Every day," he said quietly. "But fear is only useful if it teaches you to act. Otherwise it destroys you." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "And yet you act so calmly as if nothing can stop you." "Because I have seen things that could stop most men," he replied. "And I survived. That does not make me fearless. It makes me ready." Then one night, new intelligence arrived. Vorak scouts had been detected moving near the outer rim of the system, closer than before. Their numbers were unknown, but sensors indicated multiple strike groups. The Queen called an emergency meeting of the Council. Elias studied the data silently, then looked at Lyra. "They are testing us," he said. "They want to see what we've learned. If they find a weakness, they will exploit it." "What do we do?" asked one general. Elias's calm voice cut through the tension. "We do not fight them where they want. We draw them into our plan, using what they expect against them. This time we prepare for infiltration and open battle simultaneously, and we do it in a way that they cannot predict." The Council stared at him. Even the Queen's most confident generals hesitated. Yet she knew. This man had been right before. She trusted him. "Very well," she said. "We follow your plan." Over the next several nights, Elias personally oversaw the palace defenses. Hidden sensors, reinforced corridors, and stealth traps were placed throughout the complex. He trained elite guards in silent takedowns and rapid response. By the time the Vorak Shadow team arrived, the palace was ready. When the intruders infiltrated the outer corridors, they were met with a combination of careful traps, sensors, and human-guided precision attacks. One by one, the Vorak operatives were captured or neutralized without major damage. The palace remained untouched, the people inside safe. Lyra watched from the balcony as Elias moved among the corridors like a shadow himself. She had never imagined her husband could fight with such skill and precision. He was not reckless or violent, he was calculated, efficient, and protective. When the last intruder fell, Elias returned to the war room. Guards and officers looked at him with awe. Even the palace staff whispered his name in reverent tones. Later that evening, the Queen found him alone again on the balcony. Stars shone brilliantly in the night sky. Lyra approached quietly. "You never stop," she said softly. "You fight when others rest, plan when others sleep." He looked at her, calm and steady. "I fight because it matters," he said simply. "I plan because lives depend on it. I never stopped because I could not." Lyra reached for his hand. "And yet you are here, protecting me." He squeezed her hand gently. "Always. You are not just a queen. You are the heart of this world. I will protect it no matter what comes." She felt a mix of awe, fear, and love. The man she thought she knew. She realized she had barely begun to understand. Somewhere in the shadows of space, the Vorak observed. Their command chains disrupted, their scouts captured, and their plans foiled. And now they were thinking, calculating. They would return stronger, more prepared. But Elias Kane was ready, and this time, the shadow of the Vorak would find a man they could never predict. A warrior who fought not for glory, but for the lives of those he loved. The twin suns rose slowly over Velthara, painting the city in soft gold. The people moved through the streets with cautious optimism. After the last attack, they had begun to believe in a fragile peace, though everyone knew it could be shattered at any moment. Queen Lyra stood on her balcony, watching the city below. Her thoughts were heavy. The Vorak fleet had been broken once, their command chain destroyed, but they would return. Elias had proven himself in battle, but the Queen knew that even the greatest human could not fight forever. She turned as Elias entered the balcony, his posture calm, his face quiet but serious. The morning sun reflected on his features, highlighting the strength in his eyes. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied. His voice carried the weight of unspoken battles. "I've already reviewed the latest intelligence. The Vorak are regrouping near the edge of the system. Their scouts are faster this time," she frowned. "Then we cannot wait. You must lead the defense again." He shook his head. "Not exactly. This time we fight differently. I will lead the first strike, but the rest of the fleet must act independently. We cannot rely solely on one human to defend the Empire." By mid-morning, the royal war room was filled with tension and preparation. Holographic displays showed enemy movements, defense grids, and fleet positions. Elias moved among the officers, checking calculations, giving orders, and adjusting plans with a quiet precision that left everyone in awe. "You've changed everything," one young officer said in amazement. Elias glanced at him. "Not everything, just enough to survive, and victory is never certain. That is why we plan for every possibility." The Queen watched him closely. She had seen him in battle before, but this time felt different. There was a calm confidence in him, a deep understanding of strategy that no machine, no alien could predict. "Your Majesty," Elias said, turning to Lyra, "I need you to trust your fleet. Let them follow my plan." "I cannot do this alone. I trust you," she said firmly. "But remember, I also trust them. Your human way of war works best with Thalren's strength." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. The fleet prepared to leave orbit. The Thalren warships moved in formation, while Elias guided the human-manned strike group through the shadow of the planetary rings. The Vorak scouts were already near, observing and waiting for any mistake. Elias glanced at the sensors. "They're curious. They think we are vulnerable. That will be our advantage." As the enemy fleet approached, the battle began in the distance. Red beams of energy streaked through the void, striking shields and hulls. The Thalren responded immediately, firing back with coordinated precision. Yet Elias knew this fight was not won with firepower alone. "Deploy the decoys," he ordered, "and position our hidden squads along the flank. They must never know where the real attack comes from." Within moments, hundreds of small invisible drones moved into position, creating false signatures and confusing the enemy scanners. The Vorak shifted their formation, believing the main fleet had split. Elias's calm voice directed the attack, his orders crisp and precise. "Left squadron, move 10 degrees. Fire on that cluster when I signal. Right squadron, hold until they pass." Even the most experienced Thalren officers watched in awe. Every move Elias commanded was calculated, almost like a chess master playing multiple games at once. Hours passed as the battle raged in space. Explosions lit the void like fireworks, yet Elias remained calm, observing every detail. The Queen monitored from the command bridge, her heart pounding as she watched her husband maneuver ships with unmatched skill. Then Elias saw the opportunity he had been waiting for. The Vorak flagship, the Dreadspire, had separated slightly from the main fleet. Its shields were weaker after prolonged combat. He signaled the strike group. "Target their reactor nodes," he ordered. "Synchronize fire. Hit all at once." The squadron moved, plasma beams converging on the Dreadspire. Shields flickered, sparks of energy lighting up the dark metal hull. The flagship shuddered violently. The Vorak attempted to retaliate, but Elias anticipated their moves. "Redirect power to lateral shields. Fire decoys to the left." The Dreadspire erupted in a controlled explosion, sending shockwaves across space. Vorak ships scattered in disarray, their formation broken. The Thalren fleet pressed the advantage, taking down remaining enemy vessels with minimal loss. When the last ship fled, silence fell. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Back in the Royal Command Bridge, the Queen walked to Elias, her eyes wide with admiration and relief. "You've done it again," she said softly. "You've defeated the Vorak completely this time." He shook his head slightly. "Not completely. They'll rebuild. They always do. But for now, they won't challenge us for a long time." She studied him carefully. Elias, you never show fear, you never hesitate. How do you do it? He looked out at the stars, his voice calm. Because I remember what it is like to lose. Because I remember those I failed to protect. And because I will never fail you or your people if I can prevent it. Lyra reached out, taking his hand. You are more than a human, Elias. You are our champion. He smiled faintly, the weight of his past battles softening in her presence. I am just a man, he said quietly, but a man who will fight for those he cares about. That night the city celebrated. Lights danced across the streets, music filled the air, and citizens cheered for their queen and the human who had become the Empire's protector. Yet in the quiet of the palace, Lyra and Elias stood together on the balcony looking at the stars. You saved our people, Lyra said softly, not just once but twice, and yet you remain humble, calm, almost ordinary to everyone else. Elias laughed quietly. Ordinary is dangerous. If people believe I'm just another man, they will never fear me or expect my next move. That is the advantage. She shook her head, smiling. You are anything but ordinary, and I am proud to stand beside you. He looked at her, eyes filled with sincerity. And I am proud to stand beside you. You are not only a queen, Lyra. You are the heart of this world. Protecting you and your people is worth everything. Weeks passed and peace returned to Velthara. The Thalren fleet reorganized under Elias's guidance, becoming faster, smarter, and more adaptive. The people celebrated their queen and her human husband, though few truly understood the depth of his abilities. Lyra often watched him in quiet moments, repairing ships, training soldiers, or studying battle strategies. Every movement carried experience, skill, and care. She realized that she had married not only a humble man, but also a warrior, a protector, and a leader. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens under the twin moons, Lyra spoke softly. Elias, do you ever wish you could live a normal life? He looked at her, a faint smile touching his lips. I tried once, he said quietly, but I cannot ignore the people who depend on me. War may have chosen me, but it also gave me a purpose, and my purpose is here with you, protecting this world. She reached for his hand. Then we will face the future together, whatever comes. Because I now know you are extraordinary. He squeezed her hand gently, his gray eyes reflecting the light of the moons. Together, then. Far beyond the Velthara system in the dark void of space, remnants of the Vorak fleet drifted. Their commander recorded every loss, every mistake, every unexpected move of the human and the Thalren. They are not like other species, the Vorak general muttered. The human. He is unpredictable, efficient, ruthless when needed. And yet he fights for honor, not conquest. This changes everything, and in that moment, the galaxy realized that Elias Kane, a man who had seemed humble and ordinary, had become something far greater. The alien queen had thought she married a simple man, but now she knew the truth. Her husband was not just a human. He was a protector, a strategist, a warrior, and a force the galaxy had never seen before. And wherever danger arose, wherever the shadows of the Vorak returned, Velthara would have its champion,